Brown, and thank you to the panelists for being here today. Let's start with Secretary Buttigieg. As you know, a number of my constituents in South Carolina were affected by the hack of the Colonial Pipeline earlier this month. The estimate is about 40% of the gas stations in South Carolina were without gas because of that hack. That means that real people and their lives are strained by the lack of access to the gas. I know that talking to some of my constituents in Spartanburg and in Greenville, they were waiting an hour in the line to try to figure out how to get gas in their cars to take their kids to school or go to the grocery store. You called the Colonial Pipeline hack a wake-up call for the country's cybersecurity vulnerability. I actually agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I think there's another wake-up call that we are seeing as well, and I believe Secretary Jennifer Granholm said it best last week when she admitted that pipelines are the best way to transport fuel. That has to be a wake-up call for the administration that did not continue with the construction of the XL pipeline within the first few weeks of the administration. As Secretary of Transportation, do you agree with Secretary of Energy when she says that pipelines are the best way to transport fuel?
Well, of course, it depends on the context. Nobody's proposing that we establish a pipeline that goes directly to every gas station or every community in the country. Let me
give you more context then. Do you think that the important comments by the Secretary of Energy as it relates to transporting fuel through a pipeline is important enough for us to revisit the XL pipeline project, or does that statement not include the XL pipeline from your perspective?
Yeah, in my view, it does not support any change to the administration's view on the XL pipeline. It's certainly the case that over certain long distances in certain contexts, it makes sense to have pipelines. After all, one thing our department's very proud of is the work that we do through the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to make sure that 2+ million miles of pipeline in the U.S. are safe. At the same time, the president is keeping his commitment that he made during the campaign to guide any decisions about pipelines or our energy policy more generally based on climate responsibility, as well as what makes sense for our economy in the long term.
So thank you for that answer. I will say that according to many experts that I've read, the actual XL pipeline, stopping that project means that you're going to carry that energy over the roads, over the rail, which actually increases our carbon footprint, not decreases our carbon footprint. So by not having the pipeline, we're actually doing more harm to the environment and not less harm. So that is a confusing position, but I'm glad to see that there's an inconsistency between the two secretaries. Let me move to HUD and ask a question of my friend Secretary Fudge as it relates to manufacturing housing. As you may recall, back in 2019, we passed a bipartisan legislation that allowed for more manufacturing housing to be a part of the strategy that we use to help home ownership become more affordable for people throughout the country. When would you expect HUD to issue guidance for the inclusion of manufacturing housing in states and local governments' consolidated plans?
First off, thank you. It's good to see you, Senator, and I thank you and appreciate your concern about manufactured housing. You know that we do have some guidelines, and certainly the guidelines that were requested in 2019, I think probably got caught up in all of the things that were going along with COVID, but we believe that we will have something by the end of this year. We know we're a little bit behind, but as I said, in 2019, I think COVID and trying to get CARES Act funding and other things out may have delayed it, but we are working on it as we speak, sir.
As you would imagine, that my state has a disproportionate share of the manufacturing housing, and we experience lots of natural disasters. And I will say that the current state of manufacturing housing has transformed positively, where you have a stronger home, you have a more resilient home than ever imagined. And so whatever we can do to hit the accelerator on that, I believe will be helpful to those folks who are on the margin, on the bubble, so to speak. They could be a homeowner or they could not be a homeowner, depending on how accessible manufacturing housing is. So thank you very much for your commitment to move that
forward. Because I'm a strong proponent as well, Senator. So we'll get right on it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Van Hollen of Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Fudge, thank you